Ma'am, the bride has explicitly flagged your name for the service entrance. You will need to use the loading dock around back. The security guard blocked the glass doors, pointing toward the alley where the garbage trucks were parked. She said we cannot have anyone confusing the aesthetic. I looked up at the balcony. My parents were right there, watching. My mother did not step in to help. She took a sip of her wine and turned her back. 3 hours later, I cut the main power line to the building, and the only thing louder than the silence was my mother screaming my name. I have to ask if your family treated you like hired help at your own sister's party. Would you leave quietly? Or would you burn the whole thing down? Drop a fire emoji if you'd choose revenge, and tell me where you're watching from right now. 1 hour earlier, I was standing on the concrete loading dock around the back of the resort. The air here didn't smell like jasmine and expensive perfume. It smelled like dumpster juice and idling delivery trucks. I checked my watch. 6 p.m. Right on schedule. I pushed through the heavy steel service doors and stepped into the kitchen. The noise was instantaneous, clattering pans, shouting expeditors, the hiss of searing meat. But as I walked down the center aisle, the noise died out in a wave, traveling from the prep station to the pass. One by one, the sous chefs and line cooks looked up, saw me, and froze. They knew my face. They knew who signed their paychecks. The executive chef dropped his tongs. He started to wipe his hands on his apron, stepping forward to greet me, panic in his eyes. I did not stop walking. I just pressed a single finger to my lips. Silence. The chef hesitated, then gave a sharp nod and turned back to his station, barking orders louder than before to cover the confusion. I kept moving until I reached the staff locker rooms in the back. Marco, the general manager, was waiting for me by the door. He was a man who prided himself on Italian composure, but right now, he looked like he was about to vibrate out of his skin. "Miss Danielle," he hissed, his voice low and tight. "This is insane. You cannot do this. Let me go out there and end it now. I will have security remove them for trespassing." "Not yet, Marco." I walked past him into the locker room and set my tote bag on a bench. "If we kick them out now, they are just victims of a misunderstanding. They will spin it. They will say I was jealous. They will say I ruined Brittany's night because I am petty." I unzipped the bag. Inside was a clear plastic package containing a generic, black and white server's uniform, 100% polyester. Flammable. Cheap. Brittany had mailed it to me 3 weeks ago with a sticky note that just said, "Standard size. Don't alter it. I need them to commit." "Marco," I said, pulling the scratchy fabric out. "I need them to see me in this. I need them to look me in the eye. See their sister dressed like help. And treat me exactly how they have always wanted to treat me. I need the guests to see it. I need the cameras to see it." Marco looked at the uniform with genuine disgust. "You acquired the distressed debt on this property for $12 million. You saved this resort from bankruptcy. You are not a waiter. Tonight I am." I stepped behind the partition. I stripped off my blazer and my silk blouse. I pulled on the stiff black trousers that were 2 inches too short, and the white button-down that was too tight in the shoulders. I buttoned the vest. It smelled like industrial starch and humiliation. I stepped out and looked in the cracked mirror above the sinks. I did not look like a successful distressed debt specialist who had spent the last decade acquiring high-risk assets across the state. I looked like a spare part. I looked exactly how my family had always seen me. I turned to Marco. He was holding a plastic name tag. It did not even have my name on it. It just said staff. "Pin it on," I said. He hesitated, his hands shaking slightly. But he did it. "Protocol B is ready on your signal," he said softly. "Good." I straightened the cheap vest. I wasn't dressing for a party. I was dressing for an execution. "Let's go serve some champagne." I slipped into the ballroom through the service corridor, a tray of lukewarm champagne flutes balanced on my hand. The room was breathtaking: vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first car. But all I saw was the hierarchy. Brittany was in the center of the room, holding court in a custom Vera Wang gown, laughing with her bridesmaids. My parents were beside her, beaming with pride. They looked like the perfect family, the successful daughter, the doting parents, and somewhere in the background, invisible but necessary, was me. I moved along the perimeter, offering drinks to guests who didn't even look at my face. "Champagne?" I asked quietly. Most just took a glass, without a word. One woman handed me her empty napkin without breaking her conversation. I watched Brittany accept a hug from Lucas, her fiancé. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit. But Brittany was radiant. She was exactly where she had always wanted to be, the center of attention, funded by everyone but herself. My mind drifted back to the allowance conversation we had 3 years ago. I had just lost my job at the firm, and I was staring down an eviction notice. I had swallowed my pride and asked my parents for a small loan, just enough to cover rent for 2 months while I got back on my feet. "We can't just hand you money, Danielle," my father had said, not looking up from his newspaper. "It sets a bad precedent. You need to learn resilience." 2 weeks later, I found out they were giving Brittany a $5,000 monthly networking allowance so she could afford to live in the city and build connections. $5,000. Every single month. For 3 years. That was $180,000. Enough to buy a small house in some places. Enough to change my life completely. But to them, it was an investment. Brittany was the asset. I was the liability. And then there was the uniform. 3 weeks ago, when Brittany had finalized the guest list, she called me. Not to invite me, but to give instructions. "We are doing a black tie aesthetic," she said, her voice breezy. "And honestly, Danielle, you don't really have the wardrobe to stand next to Catherine. She is intimidatingly chic. I just think it would be better if you blended in. You know? Like support staff. It takes the pressure off you." She made it sound like a favor. Like she was protecting me from the embarrassment of my own closet. But I knew what it was. It was erasure. Why did I say yes? Why did I take the uniform? Why didn't I scream or throw the phone? Because when you are raised in a system where your value is constantly negotiated down to zero, compliance feels like survival. You learn to make yourself smaller to avoid the friction. You learn that keeping the peace means accepting the war being waged against your dignity. I didn't say yes because I was weak. I said yes because after 32 years, being treated as a utility felt safer than being treated as a disappointment. The uniform wasn't a costume. It was how they had always seen me. A prop in their production. But tonight, the prop was going off script. I watched Brittany spot me across the room. Her eyes narrowed, then widened with a cruel delight. She said something to her bridesmaids, and they all turned to look. Then she waved me over. Not a wave hello. A summons. A snap of the fingers. I took a breath, adjusted the tray, and walked toward her. The trap was set. Now, I just had to let her spring it. "Staff!" The word cut through the ambient chatter like a whip crack. Brittany didn't use my name. She didn't say Danielle or sister. She snapped, her fingers snap, snap, and pointed at the empty glass in front of an older woman with silver hair and a posture that screamed old money. It was Catherine, the groom's mother. The woman whose approval Brittany was desperate to buy with this 6-figure party. I walked over, keeping my eyes lowered, playing the part. "Yes, ma'am?" Brittany leaned in close, her voice a hiss of aggressive perfume and malice. "Don't embarrass me, Danielle. Catherine needs a refill. And don't give her the house pour. Go back to the reserve case and get the 2012 vintage. It is in the green crate." She grabbed my wrist, her nails digging into my skin. "And try not to shake. You look nervous. It makes you look incompetent." I looked at her hand on my arm. A year ago, that touch would have made me cry. I would have begged her to stop being so mean. I would have asked what I did wrong. But tonight, I just looked at her manicured nails and calculated the liability. "The 2012 vintage," I repeated, my voice flat. "Consider it done." "Good." She released me and turned back to her bridesmaids with a bright, fake laugh, instantly switching masks. "The help these days," she joked, loud enough for Catherine to hear. "You have to walk them through everything." I turned to head back to the service bar, but my path was blocked by my mother. Patricia was standing near the shrimp tower, holding a glass of Chardonnay. She looked me up and down, taking in the ill-fitting trousers, the polyester vest, the plastic name tag. I expected her to look ashamed. I expected a flicker of guilt for letting her oldest daughter be treated like an indentured servant. Instead, she smiled. It was a soft, genuine smile, the kind she usually saved for Brittany. "You know," she whispered, leaning in as if sharing a secret. "You look so much tidier this way, Danielle. The uniform suits you. It gives you structure. You finally fit in." The air left my lungs. There it was. The truth I had been denying for decades. They didn't hate me because I was messy or uncoordinated or unsuccessful. They hated me because I had autonomy. They preferred me as a servant because a servant has a function. A servant serves them. In this cheap polyester vest, I wasn't a disappointment anymore. I was useful. "I am glad you approve, Mother," I said. "Just keep the glasses full," she said, patting my shoulder. "And stay out of the photos." I walked away. I didn't go to the reserve case. I didn't go to get the 2012 vintage. I walked straight through the swinging doors into the kitchen, past the line cooks, past the confused waiters, and into the general manager's office. I closed the door and locked it. The sounds of the party muffled into a dull thrum. I pulled out my phone. I didn't have to look up the number. It was already dialed. Marco, I said into the receiver. Initiate Protocol B. Cut the music. We are done serving. The door to the general manager's office clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the party. The silence was instant and heavy, like the drop in pressure before a storm. Marco stood by the desk, his hand hovering over the master control panel. He looked at me, waiting. I didn't say a word. I reached up and unpinned the plastic name tag from my vest. Staff. I tossed it onto the mahogany desk. It clattered against the glass surface, a cheap sound in an expensive room. You look. Marco struggled for the word. Calm. I am calm, Marco. Rage is messy. Litigation is precise. I walked around the desk and woke up the main monitor. I didn't have to search for the file. It was already open. The operating agreement for the Gilded Oak Resort. I scrolled past the venue fees, past the catering riders, past the noise ordinances, until I found it. Clause 14, subsection C. Code of Conduct and Liability. Do you remember when I acquired the debt portfolio for this property? I asked, my eyes scanning the legal text I had written myself. 3 months ago, Marco answered immediately. The previous ownership group defaulted on their bridge loan. You bought the note for 60 cents on the dollar. Correct. And do you remember what I told you about my management style? You said you do not tolerate liabilities. Exactly. I tapped the screen. Brittany didn't just rent a ballroom, Marco. She signed a commercial contract. She agreed that any behavior creating a hostile, unsafe, or degrading environment for staff constitutes a material breach. Immediate termination of event. Forfeiture of all deposits. Instant eviction. I looked down at my polyester vest. The evidence was wearing me. She demanded a member of your staff me perform duties outside of my job description for the sole purpose of humiliation, I said. My voice cold. She physically grabbed me. She created a hostile environment. She breached the contract. Marco nodded slowly. He wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at the woman who specialized in distressed assets, the woman who walked into failing companies, identified the rot, and cut it out with surgical precision. My family saw a servant. The bank saw a shark. The parents signed the unlimited personal guarantee, I noted, checking the digital signature on the addendum. Patricia and Gregory. They didn't read it, did they? They were too busy asking if the valet parking was covered to read the fine print, Marco said, a hint of dark amusement in his voice. Perfect. I took off the vest. Underneath, I was still wearing the ill-fitting white shirt and black trousers, but without the cheap polyester shell. I felt my posture straighten. I wasn't dressing up for them anymore. I was stripping down for the fight. I picked up the microphone connected to the ballroom's PA system. It sat heavy in my hand. A weapon made of wire and mesh. Marco, I said, kill the mood lighting. Turn on the house lights. Maximum brightness. I want them to see every speck of dust. He reached for the lighting board. And the music? Cut it. I watched his finger hover over the switch. It is time to collect the debt. The ballroom was swaying to a remix of a top 40 hit. A wall of sound designed to drown out thought. Brittany was on the dance floor, jumping up and down with her bridesmaids, holding a magnum of champagne she hadn't paid for. My mother was laughing near the head table, clinking glasses with Catherine, basking in the reflected glory of the Harrington fortune. And then, silence. The music cut out mid-beat. The sudden quiet was physical, a vacuum that sucked the air out of the room. A second later, the warm, flattering mood lighting died. Click, click, click. The overhead maintenance lights slammed on harsh, fluorescent, industrial white. They bleached the romance out of the room instantly. The crystal centerpieces looked garish. The gold drapes looked cheap. The guests squinted, shielding their eyes, exposed in the unflattering glare. What is going on? Brittany's voice screeched across the silent room. Marco, fix the lights. Where's the music? I walked through the double doors at the back of the room. I wasn't carrying a tray. I was holding a microphone. My steps echoed on the hardwood floor as I walked toward the center of the room. The guests parted for me, confused by the sight of a server walking with such purpose. The music isn't coming back, Brittany, I said. My voice boomed through the PA system, calm and amplified. Brittany spun around. When she saw me, her face contorted with fury. Danielle? What are you doing with that microphone? Get back to the kitchen. You are ruining my aesthetic. There is no aesthetic, I said. There is only a breach of contract. Contract? My father stepped forward, his face red. Danielle, put that down. You are embarrassing us. Go back to your station. I don't have a station, Gregory. I didn't call him Dad. I have a deed. I signaled Marco. He stepped out from the shadows, flanked by 2 security guards, the real ones, not the rent-a-cops Brittany had hired for the door. He was holding a tablet. Ladies and gentlemen, Marco announced, his voice projecting without a mic. This event is terminated effective immediately due to the client's violation of staff safety and dignity protocols. You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises. You can't do that, Brittany screamed, storming toward me. I paid for this venue. I paid the deposit. Actually, I said, meeting her eyes. You paid the deposit to the previous management company. The one that went bankrupt 3 months ago. The one whose debt I purchased. I watched the realization hit her. It was slow, like a crack spreading across a windshield. You? She whispered. Me. I raised the microphone again. I acquired the distressed debt of the Gilded Oak Resort 90 days ago. I am the sole owner of this property, and as the owner, I have a zero-tolerance policy for the abuse of my staff. I pointed to the vest I had just taken off, now draped over a chair. You demanded I wear that to humiliate me. You grabbed me. You treated me like property. And in doing so, you triggered the eviction clause of your rental agreement. No. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Danielle? You own this place? I own the building, the land, the wine cellar you have been raiding, and the debt you signed your name to, I said. And right now, you are all trespassing. The ballroom exploded into whispers and raised phones. Catherine rose slowly, eyes darting between Brittany and me. Is this true? She demanded. It's a lie, Brittany screamed. She's jealous. She owns nothing. Marco, I said. Show them. He lifted the tablet. The deed glowed on screen. It's time for you to leave. Security closed in, but Brittany didn't go quietly. Rage took over. She yanked her arm free and shrieked. You stole everything! The venue, the night, my life! To her, I would always be the invisible sister. The idea I had power shattered her illusion. She spun, grabbed a 6-liter champagne bottle, and hurled it at my head. She missed. Crash. The bottle obliterated the hotel's prized Chihuly sculpture, $200,000 of glass raining down across marble. Silence swallowed the room, and then the truth landed. Harder than the bottle. My parents had signed Marco's booking agreement months earlier without reading it, complete with an unlimited personal guarantee. I walked through the smashed glass. That was valued at $215,000, I said. Insurance won't cover intentional destruction. I tapped the contract. And Gregory, you are personally liable. The police arrived minutes later. Brittany was cuffed and dragged away, screaming that I ruined her life. My mother begged. She's your sister. No, I said. She's a liability. I held up my phone. $200,000 for the sculpture. $15,000 for the floor. $50,000 for cancellation. All out of pocket. My father sagged. We mortgaged the house for the deposit. We have nothing left. I know, I replied. You have $220,000 in equity. I already bought the debt. The lien is filed Monday. I am taking the house. There was nothing left to say. I walked past frozen guests and shattered glass, through the doors opened by the doorman. Good night, Miss Danielle, he said. Good night, Thomas. I drove away and left them with the bill and the reality that status doesn't cancel consequences. They wanted me as a servant. I served them justice.